Hello, hello, everyone. It is Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. This is my comic book countdown video. Actually, I'm going to do the comic book countdown. I'm going to talk about one weird art comic that I didn't include in the countdown, and I'll show you some stuff I just pulled out of my storage area because I wanted to finally get around to reading some of my back issues. For the new comics that came out Wednesday, May 15th, that I'm talking about, I got 9 of them. I will give some of my thoughts about them while doing a countdown in descending order, starting with the one that I had the least fun reading and then ending with the one that was the most fun for me, that I got the most out of. I have to say this week, two of my overall thoughts were the art was great on all of these comics, which is a shocker. I didn't really analyze the covers the way I did a few weeks ago, but I don't think I had any big complaints about the covers. Maybe one or two. I don't know. I didn't even think about that this week, but I was amazed the art was so good because I'd just been thinking there's a lot of meh or art that's kind of on a low level, in my opinion, out there, which might be due to the fact that comic book artists don't get paid very well. And I've heard comments like the pay rates are the same as they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I looked at one of those inflation calculators. If your rates are actually what they were 30 years ago, with inflation, your pay has been cut in half. So if comic book artists are being paid half of what they were paid 30 years ago, it would be no surprise that the art has gone downhill. Just because you would have to take on you'd have to take on more art jobs to try to make some money. So anyway, that's more conjecture for some other video, perhaps. But that whole theory that comic art is sliding down was disproved this particular week with this particular set of comics. In fact, the comic I rated lowest at number 9 had incredibly good art. A lot of people loved this comic, and maybe the art was a big part of it. I think the reason why it ended up being the comic that I had the least fun, it was the comic that disappointed me the most. I had such high expectations. I was excited to see a one shot of Doom, not a series, but a one shot. Yeah, it says giant size one shot right on the cover. Sanford Green and Jonathan Hickman. I vaguely remember the name Sanford Green from doing a Power Man and Iron Fist comic a while back. But apparently he also does Bitter Root. I think I've read a few issues of Bitter Root and like the art there too. But I flipped it open and saw this incredible art and color, and it was a one-shot Doctor Doom, and I had really high expectations. So it's not an awful comic, and some people have really loved it that I've seen doing their reviews. It was their favorite comic of the week. But for me, not 9/10, about I don't know, 6/10 of the comic book or more were flashback, where the character of Valeria, daughter of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, is calling Doctor Doom her uncle, and she's recounting to him how Galactus has been destroying the universe, eating planets, destroyed Earth. And so we get all these events in kind of giant montages, which look pretty, but once I'm reading the story, felt a little unsatisfactory. But I was okay. We'll give you that. That's the backstory that we're getting to, and but then when the actual action happened, we're still not. This is the center of the comic. We're still in flashback mode. It really is a Galactus comic book, but it's also kind of it's not quite a reference book about what Galactus does in End Times, but it's more of a review, an overview. So finally we get to the action. There's Doctor Doom. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I wanted him to look like this. That's silly of me, but then Doctor Doom is fighting these people. This looks really cool, but when you try to follow the fight and see what's going on, there's not much to follow. It's not really. It just looks cool, but it doesn't do much in the way of storytelling for me. The color, I'm kind of glad I have this comic book just for this incredible art. I remember thinking Sanford Green was good, but I don't remember him being this good. So maybe there's more excitement to come from him in the future. He and Jonathan Hickman co-wrote this, but I have a feeling it was perhaps designed so that to give Sanford a chance to just really go crazy on the page. And so on that level, it was well worth the money. I guess I shouldn't spoil the end, but to me, the end just seemed like the beginning. Maybe the story was really going to begin now, but I think it was just supposed to. I don't know. And I was like, is this the regular 616 universe, or is this another universe? Is this far in the future, or does this connect to current Marvel continuity? Would all of these events mean more to me if I was reading more Marvel? This is the only Marvel magazine I picked up this week, and I'm picking up very little Marvel. It's been Planet of the Apes. So I don't know what's currently going on. There were some neat sketches by Sanford Green in the back. There, Doctor Doom looks like Doctor Doom. I understand that they were, in some way, Valeria was updating Doctor Doom's. Also, Doom doesn't seem to be upset to be out of his armor there. Valeria's updating his armor so that he can fight Galactus better. But I don't know. I'm just picking at it because it just somehow did not deliver the goods for me. Another thing is there's some kind of interesting relationship between Valeria and Doctor Doom that I was intrigued by, but it wasn't really explored. It was kind of like perhaps the student is now the mentor or the leader, like even though Doom keeps saying how important he is. And my ideal Doctor Doom story would have a closer focus, not this broad cosmic canvas. You could set a story with a broad cosmic focus, I suppose, or a broad cosmic canvas, but still have a closer focus on things if you wanted to. Anyway, I really look forward to more work by Sanford Green. And maybe I should be looking up, what's the story he's famous for? I think they actually say in the back. No, they don't. Anyway, Sanford Green has me quite intrigued. So there, yeah, I was being picky. The funny thing is, I liked Monolith, not actually by Todd McFarlane. He did this variant cover, but overseen by Todd McFarlane. It's another Spawn book that takes place a few thousand years in the future in outer space, when somebody in the Spawn universe called the Omega Spawn has basically turned the universe into chaos and violence and unhappiness and evil. And he also has this sort of prison thing floating outside of Earth. And our hero, Monolith Spawn, is going there to stop him. But is it too late to stop him? I don't know. So it's very much like Doom versus Galactus. This is Monolith versus Omega Spawn. The art is really cool also. I haven't heard of this artist before. He has the interesting and hard to pronounce name Valerio Giangiordano. Maybe that was Dick Giordano's family's real last name before they immigrated to the U.S. So it has an almost Richard Corbin, or there's some other artist from the early days of heavy metal that this reminds me of that I can't remember the name of anymore. But so it's really cool to look at. And although I think it's very Photoshop done, it doesn't feel at all artificial intelligence art or anything like that. So it was fun, but I never really knew what the stakes are or what they're going to get out of it. And then this character, Gaia, appears. Apparently Gaia's somewhere on this floating city that has become it kind of looks like Manhattan, but it's a prison island floating in space. So anyway, none of it really made sense to me. Really, the Doom book, in a logical point of view, was much better, but I had more fun reading Monolith because I lacked expectations. I might get another issue of Monolith to see if it starts making more sense to me, but I'm not putting it on my pull list yet. And sadly, I don't think I'll be putting Heartpiercer on my pull list. I might check out a second issue. This one had fantastic art, I guess by, is it Gavin Smith? And colors by Nicholas Bergdorf. So they made a great team. This is a fantasy story. There's some kind of evil lord and this woman who's kind of one of his champions, I guess. And she goes out and I don't want to give away too much, but she goes out and does some dirty work for him, and then he kills her. Only she doesn't die. And after he kills her, the world becomes all evil, I guess. And she awakens to a world of evilness and is out to get revenge on the High Dark Lord who she had been a follower of. Perhaps, I think maybe she thought he was a good guy until that betrayal. So incredible art. I don't have a hook into this main character yet. I can't even remember her name. So it kind of raises in my mind, like, what is it? Why do some fantasy stories hook me and others don't? Because they all have very similar elements, right? There's magical creatures, magical weapons, evil lords, heroes, the land that needs saving. But some are very effective for me and some aren't. But the art is so good, and it looks like it could be a fun story. I wonder if in issues to come, we will learn more about her relationship with this lord of sorts who have ultimately betrayed her, that will give her character some dimensionality and make her of more interest to me. But we don't have that in this first issue. So I'm just not sure whether to continue with it. I'm more of a science fiction fan than a fantasy fan. I can enjoy fantasy. What was it? Blood Right was a fantastic fantasy comic. And I've enjoyed some others. But then there are others that have just sort of left me flat. So if you're a big fantasy fan, it might be worth checking out. And if Dark Horse lets it run long enough, it may develop into a richer story. So it's one to keep an eye on for me. So that was the Doom was number 9, Monolith was at number 8, Hellpiercer at number 7, and at number 6 I'm putting Napalm Lullaby by Rick Remender and the single named artist Bengal, who is referred to as Ben on the letters page. So I don't know if that's his real name or if Ben is his, or Ben or Bengal is his first name. The art was really cool in here too, and the color was, took a kind of unique path for most comics, but the coloring really made sense for the story and where it was set, because we were kind of in God's city here. Although God is not called God, it's like garlic or something, Gorlock. And this also kind of, although it is science fiction and superheroes, I guess, kind of like Heartpiercer, it hasn't really given us enough to care about our heroes. Our heroes didn't even really appear in the first issue, or just barely. And then in the second issue, they were just presented to us without much explanation. And I understand Rick Remender's desire to not give away too much. But I feel like ultimately it's the characters who a lot of people are saying this is the kind of a lesser Rick Remender comic. And so I think if he got us on the side of the characters more. And one thing I noted is like in issue 2, they established after much long thought and practice and everything, they're planning to finally go kill the god, or kill the son of God, basically the Superman character who's claiming to be the son of God in this world. And but in this issue, we realize they don't have a plan. They don't know what they're getting into. They're not at all prepared. And so all we see is that it seems ridiculous that they thought they could pull this off. And I guess they're doing this. There was some vague mention of their mother and something that happened to their mother. And then someone shows up at the end of this issue who might be their mother. I don't know. Sorry for the spoiler on that. But with these continuing stories where we're only getting little pieces, it's hard to know where you're spoiling something and where you aren't. But there's a lot of detail in there that I did not go into. At number 5, much to my shock, so kind of right in the middle, I enjoyed all of these, right? I mean, even the Doom one, I could enjoy the art. I just kept wishing there was something different than it was. Was The Principles of Necromancy, issue 2. And I picked it up on the faint hope that the story wouldn't be too similar to the last story. And I did that because Jared Osborne suggested this was going to be like Ice Cream Man, where there was a different story each issue. And he was right. Who knew Jared Osborne could ever be right? But if you don't know Jared's channel, I'll put a link to it down below. He's been doing YouTube for a long time, and he has a very good channel. So we do get some of the grossness of the last issue, but it's much more a story of character and about a young girl and the changes she goes through when she meets this weird doctor, Dr. Eyes. Is that his name? Dr. Jacob Eyes, yes. And that apparently is just his doctor's mask, and it doesn't seem to bother anybody. And then underneath, he is rather disturbing looking, but again, it doesn't seem to bother anybody. So this young girl is curious about medicine and science and tries to get him to make her his apprentice. And it works for a while. It's a cool little story, mostly low-key, it's a well-done short story with a few twists that may play out later in later stories about Dr. Eyes. So we get some stuff about Dr. Eyes, and we get this young girl's story. I assume she won't reoccur, but who knows? So I am now pretty impressed by the principle of necromancy, but also a little squeamish. I wish it was a little less visceral. It would be, to me, even though maybe it would, in the minds of the artists and the writers, be less realistic, I think it would be easier for me and maybe for other readers to become more involved in the story instead of just involved in the grotesqueries. I already showed you a pretty gross page, but excuse me. Anyway, yeah, I already showed you this page. But there's body parts everywhere. But very interesting comic, and just amazing that something like this exists at all, to me. So I appreciate it. I thought at first that this Magma Comics might have just been the self-publishing branch of Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, the writers, because they're fairly well-known writers doing Marvel and DC work. But here they mention other comics being done by this company, and they show the publishers who are not the same people. Denton J. Tipton, I guess, is the leader of all this, perhaps. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Magma Comics lasts. We've seen a bunch of smaller publishers fade away in the last year or two, but there are some that seem to be rising up. Maybe this Magma definitely. What's it called? Not Bad Idea. Can't think. Mad Cave. Mad Cave seems to be coming on strong, at least for now. Okay, this comic I put kind of in the middle, but the funny thing is I could have at points made it my number 9 comic or my number 1 comic. That was House of Brainiac, issue 3, Action Comics, number 1065. The saga continues. It also it resembles to some degree that Doom book against Galactus, because Brainiac is developing into kind of a Galactus level threat to everybody. It says my computer power is down, so I should plug it in. Luckily, I'm sitting right by the plug, so you just get this exciting cinematic moment I plug in the computer, and then we keep going. There we go. I'm now viewing the art in this Brainiac series as kind of state-of-the-art superhero comics for 2024, comic art for 2024. It's just so good, page after page. And this is, what is it? Like, this artist is practically doing, I guess, 2 or more, maybe 4 comics a month. I think 2 comics a month. And I was just picked at it in my mind. It's actually, if you just let go and don't like pick at plot holes or science fiction holes, it's just a lot of fun. And it has a ton of DC characters, callbacks to old weird characters, like what's he called? The Space Cabbie. So, like, when our Superboy and is it Supergirl, Superboy and Supergirl free themselves from the shrink where they've been shrunk, but they remain shrunk. They're just free on Brainiac's ship. Why are there things that look like sort of monster wolves prowling inside Brainiac's ship as sort of an antibody? I don't know. A lot of little details kind of bugged me, but they shouldn't have let them bug me. Now, it even bugs me that the way Lobo is portrayed is just kind of a buff guy, but not like a giant monster kind of buff guy. And that Lobo and all his kind, I guess, can breathe in space for some reason. I liked that. It always bothers me when Superman can breathe in space. I like that Superman has to wear a space helmet. I also think that in space, Superman ought to have to be able to fly in a vehicle. Or he could fly in a straight line. There'd be no way to turn or anything like that because of the lack of gravity. I guess he could turn slowly by aiming himself at the moon and turn around the moon. Anyway, they make a big deal about how the Lobos, or Lobo and his kind, they can't fly. But in space, does that matter? So anyway, I let all these little details somehow bother me, which I shouldn't have. And then there was an interesting backup story which confused me a bit. Was the character in here Brainiac 5 from the Legion? And if so, why is he the son of Brainiac? He would be... Anyway, I was a bit confused about that part. Maybe just a hole in my DC lore. But this art was kind of cool. It was an interesting side story that I assume will play out in the major story. So I can't believe I'm enjoying an event comic this much. So then my top 3, nothing completely satisfied me this week. Like I said, I was in a picky state of mind. My top 3 could almost be in any order. It's very close. Although I guess it's pretty fair to put Redcoat at number 3. Fantastic art from Brian Hitch, and I've always been a Brian Hitch fan since I first came across his work in The Authority and then in The Ultimates. And he's really doing a fantastic job here. And so he makes every page super fun. Now, one of the other characters is a 12-year-old Albert Einstein, which they can do. They can make that work for me. But the way they handled it threw me out of the story for a little bit. This is me being picky. So in this panel here, it's just a caption of Redcoat telling us what Einstein told him about his sister having dreams about great fires and horrible things happening in America. So Albert Einstein, as a kid, stows away on a boat and comes to America to try to solve the problem. So I think there could have been another way to fit Einstein in there, and maybe link math and magic or something, that because he would have that mathematical brain. And Einstein had a special kind of imagination that allowed him to make these leaps forward. So it's definitely, and it still could pay off well. spent a little bit of the issue being bothered by that, which was silly. And we get the introduction of Benedict Arnold, who is also immortal, which is interesting. So I hope this Redcoat series lasts a long time and we get to really dig into all of the lore and all of the characters and maybe see them develop, especially like if we see Albert Einstein at different times in his development. That would be really cool. So my only other real complaint about this is it read so fast. I was like, what? The story's over already? Crap. I want to know what happens next. So anyway, Redcoat's a really good book, and it really does make me like it better that it has this cardstock cover. I think there were 22 or 24 pages of story, and then there was, some good back matter. Some of the back matter just gets repeated in every issue, but yeah, we got like a bio of their fictional Albert Einstein there. That was fun. So yeah, really good book. I also enjoy Geiger, but I think at the moment Redcoat's my favorite. And I think that Ghost Machine has other books coming up. At least they tease titles. So I'm quite curious. Devour, First Ghost, Hornsby Halo, Hyde Street, Rocket Fellers. Is that going to be like a bunch of Rocketeers? The Soulless. That's a lot of books, but some of them might be really great, judging by what they've already done. Okay, so I'm going to put it number 2. A comic book that I'm currently loving a lot. I think one of the things that's brilliant about it is the combination of this kind of beautiful painted art and the flat cartoon art of the world of our hero's grandfather. So everything is, Tony Fleeks, if that's how you pronounce his name, he hits all the beats just right. The art is fantastic. I like with Redcoat, I got to the end and I was like, whoa, the story's over already, or this chapter of the story's over already. This is definitely, I think, going to be a fantastic read in trades. I'll keep getting it in single issues, but judging from the first 2 issues, it's going to really work in trades. The only thing that gave me a little pause was apparently there's a Dark Lord. And that's going to be fun enough, but part of me was like hoping for something else than a quest, a battle against the Dark Lord. But we'll see what nice twists and turns Tony Fleeks and Dan Wachter come up with for this. And Pat Brousseau, the letterer. I did like the lettering in it. In some comics I don't like it when they don't have a line around the bubbles, but I think that really worked well with the sort of mostly painted looking comic. The other thing is I love Roadrunner and Coyote, so I loved the appearance of their version, the Dingo of the Roadrunner. So cool comic. Another one I hope is going to have a long run because I really want to dig into this world. And a comic that has had a long run and is amazing that it's still going, at number 39, Ice Cream Man. There was a period when Ice Cream Man started where clearly there was a concept of a character named Ice Cream Man and the backstory to him that they were starting to reveal, and then they just dropped it. So the way to enjoy Ice Cream Man is to read each one as a short story or short comic book experiment. It's always using the comic book form to do interesting things, and here it's very explicit about that, about how they're taking 5 seconds of a car crash and spreading it out over 28 pages. The art is just kicking it. I suppose I've gotten very used to Martin Morazzo over the years, but I feel like he's upped his level even more with issues like this. And the great thing about Prince, what's his first name? About W. Maxwell Prince. That's why I have trouble remembering his first name. Great thing about W. Maxwell Prince is he's built into this comic the idea that it takes risks, that it's always going to throw something else at you. The only thing, well, there were two things that only one thing really bothered me, and another one just struck me as like, so we get as these people are in a car crash, which we were told from the very beginning they're not going to survive, we get what's going through their mind in the few seconds before they die. And one of the things we get is that the marriage is not working out. And we've got the marriage, lots of marriages don't work out, and that's perfectly realistic. But it felt like that was the one little bit of repetition in this book. A marriage that's gone sour and the parents can't get along anymore and divorce is imminent. So I don't know. I just kind of wished he'd gone a different way with that, because that felt like I could predict that Maxwell Prince would put a marriage that's falling apart in it. And then the other thing is, well, there's a couple of weird things which were mostly fine, but the boy flashes forward to discovering he's gay. He's too young yet to really have discovered that or know what those feelings, what he's feeling now are. I guess, now that I think about it, that was pretty creative too. I found it odd at the time, but I don't know. Maybe it made me stop and say, with that, the other things that are going on in people's brains as they're dying made more sense to me than you would discover your sexuality as you die. But maybe that works. I don't know. Still, it was the number one comic for me. And another groundbreaking issue. I mean, what more should I ask for? I'm just being picky. So there was another new comic I picked up this past Wednesday, and it was My Body Unspooling. And I decided it made no sense to include it in the countdown. I could either say, I personally wouldn't, one might say, oh, it's way better than all these comics because it's so much more experimental and unique and an individual voice, which it is. Or I could have put it at number 10 because, frankly, I didn't really care about the story. It was more a prose poem or a mini prose pondering that was then illustrated. And the illustrations are kind of indirect. I don't think you can gather a story from the pictures. You can gather a feeling. You can gather a sense of visual dynamics. But we have someone named Lucille, who is a he, according to the back of here. He has female parts, I think, and feels disattached from his body or their body, whatever. It says he, so I'm going to call him he. Otherwise, I would call her she. So I guess maybe it's a story or maybe a thought piece about a prose poem about body dysphoria or whatever it's called. It's not something that I understand. I've never had body dysphoria. I've always thought the mind and body were one, that this hand is part of my mind. So I don't feel this mind-body separation either. Not saying that other people shouldn't, but it didn't add to my understanding of it. And also, really, as a story, it was just kind of simplistic. He separates from their body somehow, and then in the end comes back to it and learns to be, I've just spoiled the plot, learns to be at peace with their body or something. You want to get back together. So then is it about bodies? What is it about? I don't know. Maybe other people just feel a distance from their body and then they come back to their body. That's quite plausible. But the other thing is, to me, it was comics adjacent. It wasn't really a comic book. It didn't use pictures and words to tell a story. That's, to me, what comics are. So it was a illustrated think piece, to me. Other people might argue. So I went over to my comic book storage space, which has been bought. I've had it, I think, for a year and a half, or has it been 2 years? It's been bought by. It's on the third owner since I started renting there, and of course, each owner has raised the rent. It hasn't quite gotten to the. It now seems like a lot less of good of a deal. But hasn't quite gotten to the point where I'm ready to look around for a different storage space. That's a lot of work, and I guess they probably know that. So I have had a bunch of boxes labeled Conan or Sword and Sorcery or Barbarians, and I was searching through it looking for some specific Conan comics, and I didn't find them yet. So that's very frustrating. I have to go back. I spent but it got me organizing a bunch of other comics, and I picked out a bunch that I want to either look through or perhaps, I guess I wouldn't have time to read all of these, but in theory, read a lot of these. So, excuse me. One of the characters I lumped amongst the barbarians was Ka-Zar, or Ka-Zar, as we've all learned to pronounce it once we learned how Stan Lee pronounced it. But I think Ka-Zar makes more sense than Ka-Zar looking at it. So I have a bunch of these. I think this is essentially the second Ka-Zar series, or maybe the first full proper Ka-Zar series was in Astonishing Tales. Although this is not the first issue, because this reprints in color a story from Savage Tales as Ka-Zar. I think the first issue of Savage Tales where Ka-Zar became one of the main characters in Savage Tales. So like Savage Tales number 5 or 6, something like that. It's really nice to have this in color though. Oh, but it wasn't a full-length story, so they stuck in Lorna the Jungle Girl. I'm now much more interested in Lorna the Jungle Girl than I was when I first. I had this issue as a kid. I remember it, and I had the Savage Tales, and I have issue number 10 of Astonishing Tales. So a lot of these I must have picked up at 50-cent bins, and that's why I still haven't put them in bags. Number 11, I really like that Gil Kane cover there, although it's not pretty, but I like it. Ooh, Gil Kane interior with Frank Giacoia inking. Okay, now I'm super excited. I got to read these. But I don't have all the issues. I was 11. I've got 14. I don't know why that. I think that I was at some place where the prices were color coded. So I think everything with this black dot might have been $1, and everything with a blue dot was another color, etc. Another Gil Kane cover. The Monster and the Machine, one of those picture frame covers. So this must be the very early 70s. Now he's in the concrete jungle. Yeah, I liked him better in the jungle, but I'll probably read that. Let's see. Yeah, so that's 15, and then I have 17. And I remember 17 well. I had this as a kid, although it says maybe I rebought it at Cloud9, probably at a 50% off sale. So this has some really great Dan Adkins art, as I remember. Yeah, look at that splash page. That's incredible. No, this is in bad shape. It's all bent up on the back. So anyway, yeah, I remember this one very fondly as a kid. And this guy was like 2 people in one here. And so he had the strength of 2 men, which made him almost as strong as Ka-Zar. Ka-Zar. Number 20. I'm going to look inside. I guess I've never looked inside this one because there's still tape on it. I don't allow tape. I reject tape. This one's pretty beat up too. Interior art, Marie Severin and Werner Roth with Frank Giacoia on the inks. So I guess some of the pages will be Marie Severin and will be very good, and some will probably be Werner Roth and I'll like them less. Let's see, all I'm looking at looks like Marie Severin. Anyway, this should be fun. Who wrote it? Mike Frederick. I'm less of a fan of Mike Frederick. But he does some good work. I think he was the main writer on this early Ka-Zar run, actually. Okay, and then I think shortly after, well, it's 25 cents, so this is 1974, they started up a Ka-Zar run with his own title. And I guess I don't have number 1 and 2, or at least I didn't find them in my boxes yet. I can check my CLZ. And we start with Don Heck, but some strong inks by Mike Royer. Still Mike Frederick on the story. So that's Ka-Zar number 3, number 5, number 6. I think I had this one too. Whoa. Alfredo Alcala. Alfredo Alcala on the inks, overwhelming but beautifying the work of our pal John Buscema. So that is one of my favorite combos. And I think this is one that I have some original art from. Might be one of these pages. And that was number 6. Got number 7. So this is Buscema, but inked by Bob McLeod. And I'm guessing this is early in Bob McLeod's career because that splash page doesn't look so good. But it's still John Buscema, so I'm sure it'll be an action-packed, fun issue. So still Mike Frederick. Gary Conway. Woohoo. Issue number 8. To me, that looks like Gil Kane inked by Klaus Janson, maybe? Possibly Tom Palmer, but probably Klaus Janson. But we still got Buscema and Alcala inside. That is incredible. It doesn't get better than that. Issue number 9. I guess I bought that from good old mycomicshop.com. Issue number 10. Issue number 10. I guess I was worried I didn't have that one. Issue number 11. And again, issue number 11. Now, it might be that I hadn't entered it into my CLZ, or it might have been, I remember I went to a sale at Cosmic Monkey. That's a 50% off sale at Cosmic Monkey, and I didn't have my iPhone with me. I remember buying a lot of comics that I ended up with doubles there. So 2 issues 11. Issue 12 with a cover by J.K. and J.R. Jack Kirby and John Romita together. It looks like John Romita mostly. Number 13. I'm not sure who did that cover. To me, it looks like Klaus Janson inking, but I can't tell the rest. Number 14. There it's signed Buckler and Giacoa. Got to keep Higgy happy, so I've got 2 Buckler and Giacoa covers. Number 15, All This Plus Claw. Oh man, I love Claw. Not really. Oh, but here's more Claw. Isn't Claw originally the Black Panther's villain? It's not signed that I can see, but this looks like Rich Buckler to me. That was 16, 17. Savage Action in the Mighty Marvel Manor. And another 17, yeah, from Cosmic Monkey again. Yeah, that sale, I think I bought a lot of Ka-Zars that I already had. 18, that's a cool cover, by Wenzel and Atkins. I forget what Wenzel's first name was. I only remember him appearing occasionally in comics. But that's a pretty good cover. Whoops, something fell. Okay, number 19 and number 19. And number 20. They really liked, or someone in writing this really liked Claw. Couldn't get rid of Claw. I don't know if that was the end of the series, but that's the end of what I have there. I have more to show, but I bet this is a really long video already. So there were, I'll just tell you, I also brought home with me a ton of Conans from the 90s, which I have never read. But some of them actually have some pretty good looking covers. So I thought I really should check these out. So I hopefully will over the next week or two. Okay, everyone. Talk to you later. Enjoy reading your comics. Have a good comic book week, and I'll talk to you soon.